Joined by about 26 people. That's fantastic. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and welcome to this online information session for Town Hall Gallery's Community Exhibition Program. My name's Ellie Hale. I'm one of 3 curators working at the City of Boroondara, and we are responsible for curating exhibitions at the Town Hall Gallery and public programs to support those exhibitions, and also looking after the Town Hall Gallery collection. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners as the original custodians of this land, including the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people in the northern part of our city, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Stephanie Sacco, fellow curator at the gallery, and also Alana Seal, our curatorial support officer. So thank you both very much for your support delivering today's event. During the next hour, we're going to introduce the community exhibition program and cover the following topics. So Steph, you might like to go to the next slide now. Thank you. We'll do an introduction to the program, go through the eligibility criteria, important dates, look at the 2 exhibition spaces available, their selection criteria that we work to when we're assessing applications. We're going to talk through the community exhibition program themes, which is new this year, so we'll run through that. What is expected of you if your application is successful, and what support you can expect from us if your application is successful, and then how to complete your online application form through the Smarty grants portal. I'd like to just note that we're recording this session and we're going to be making that available on our website. For anyone who wants to revisit all of the information that we'll be going through tonight, or anyone who was unable to join us today. And after the presentation sort of component of this evening, we'll be giving you time to ask us questions. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and there's also the chat function as well. So please feel free to pop your questions in there throughout the discussion. We might answer some as we go along, but probably we'll get to those towards the end. So to give an introduction to the community exhibition program, this is a space that we offer to artists, community groups and schools from the municipality to exhibit work for free. And anyone who's successful with their application receives support from us. Each exhibition lasts approximately 4 to 6 weeks, with up to 12 exhibitions scheduled per year. And successful applicants have the opportunity to make their works available for sale, and we facilitate those sales and take a 15% commission. And over the last 10 years, we've been delighted to help facilitate over $85,000 worth of sales back to local artists of Boroondara. Each year in this space, with the one that's sort of on the screen at the moment, that's what we often refer to as Gallery 4 and the main space for our community exhibitions. We tend to curate a variety of exhibitions that include solo shows, group shows, shows where we group together individual applications that are applicants that are open to a group show, and we also get applications from local schools and primary schools or community groups. So we always try and keep it varied across a year as well. So I'll move on to the eligibility criteria. To be eligible to exhibit as part of this program, applicants must be an emerging artist living or with a studio in Boroondara, a practicing artist not represented by a commercial gallery living in Boroondara or with a studio in Boroondara, students at a school or institution that's located in Boroondara, or students at a university or TAFE in Boroondara, an historical group or an arts organisation or community group that's based in Boroondara, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who live or study in the inner east region, which is considered Boroondara, Monash, Manningham or Whitehorse. It's good to be aware of the fact that you can't exhibit 2 consecutive years in a row in this space. So, for example, if you exhibited last year, you can apply it this year for an exhibition next year. But if you're exhibiting this year, you will have to wait until applications open around this time again next year to then be considered for the following year. All applicants who are First Nations, culturally diverse, LGBTQIA and members of the disability and deaf community are encouraged to apply. Our events and venues are accessible to all, and all our venues are fully wheelchair accessible with ambulant toilets. There's a public car park at the back of Hawthorne Arts Centre with places reserved for disability parking. I'll run through some important dates. So applications are now open on Smarty Grants, an online application form, and applications are going to close at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday the 20th of June. And then we will be assessing those applications and notifying applicants of the outcome by Monday the 9th of August. We highly recommend that you start your application early, just in case you have any trouble or you have any questions you want to ask us along the way. And I'll run through the 2 exhibition spaces. So next slide. Thanks, Steph. This is Gallery 4. This is the space that was pictured earlier and probably on the next slide we'll come to in a second. There's approximately 30 metres of hanging space in this in Gallery 4, although that long wall, 18.5 metres, a small section of that wall is reserved for the vinyl lettering that we put up for each exhibition, just with the title of the show and the artist or the artist's names. And then, so Steph, do you want to jump forward to the next? Thank you. So here's an example of a solo show in the space, and everyone gathering for the artist's official opening. Although this year we're introducing an additional space, and we're thinking that this Gallery 4 space is probably going to be quite well suited to some of the group exhibitions we look at curating next year. If you go through a couple of slides, Steph, we've just got a few more examples of exhibitions in that space. And this one's a group show with 5 artists from earlier this year. And then we'll move on to the Centre Foyer space. This is the first year we're actually opening up the community exhibition program to curate exhibitions across both spaces. So this space is in the foyer of Hawthorne Arts Centre. A little less hanging space, about 11 metres, but it's beautifully lit with some windows facing onto Burwood Road. We have the option to add movable walls that add a little bit more hanging space. And Steph, if you go through the next couple, pardon me, a couple of slides, we've just got some examples of some exhibitions installed in that space. You can probably see in this photo here that we use a hanging system as well when we're installing exhibitions. All right, I'll move on to the selection criteria. So there's 5 areas that we work to. The first being connection to community. So this could simply be the fact that you are a local artist, but it could also be the fact that you might look at local subject matter or work with local community members, that sort of thing. We're looking for clarity of theme or concept of the exhibition or project. So when Alana will go through the Smarty Grants application form a little later on, and there's certain fields to answer, and we always recommend, you know, in your first sentence or 2 that you quite clearly convey your ideas or your interests just in the first sentence or 2 before then elaborating, and that gets your idea across a little more clearly. We're looking for appropriateness of the exhibition or the project to the space and the available resources. So here we're hoping to see that you have an understanding of the spaces that are available and how your work might fit there and how many works you might include, that sort of thing. Certainly we don't expect all of the works to be ready at application time, but just want to see that you've given this a little bit of thought. We're looking for innovation, excellence, or diversity represented in artistic practice. So we're looking for work that's innovative, of a high standard, it's diverse. I think at this point it's worth noting that every year we receive a number of applications of sort of nature or nature and Burundara. So just be aware there's probably a little bit more competition in that area, or perhaps maybe think about something you can do with your application to make that a little bit more unique. And we're also looking for quality of documentation. So This probably mostly refers to the images that you include in your application. You can only upload 5 images, so really make sure that every image counts. If the work's not actually created, just upload some examples of works that represent your practice, and just try your very best to take good quality photographs of your works. So this means be mindful of not having conflicting light sources of sort of daylight and tungsten light bulbs while you're trying to photograph, and positioning your work and making sure the angle of your camera matches the angle of the work, that sort of thing. We actually have a photography resource that we can share with you after this session, just with some tips on how to photograph your artwork, because it can be very tricky. So I'll move on, pardon me, to the community exhibition program themes. So this is a new addition to our community exhibition program themes program for this year, for next year, sorry. We're introducing these 3 themes and inviting people to respond to them. So that doesn't mean you have to respond to them. It just means you might think, oh, actually my work might tie into one of these themes. Or if you're looking for inspiration, you might want to respond to one of these themes. So the 3 themes are migrant experience, what were your expectations, fears and challenges in migrating to Australia, create a work or works that share your experience of making a new home in Boroondara. You might like to respond to a work in the Town Hall Gallery collection. Our collection is available online. If you search Town Hall Gallery collection on the City of Boroondara website, you can browse, and we've got over 1,000 works in there that you can browse and see what takes your fancy. And the idea is that you'd create a work or a number of works that are your own unique response to an item from the collection. And the third one is extreme vantage. So exploring the aesthetic potential of extreme sightlines. Create a work or works that use any medium to capture different viewpoints, such as aerial perspective, bird's eye view, worm's eye view, tilt, close up or long shot. So hopefully some of you might get inspired by that. Perhaps you've got some ideas already. And I'll move on to what's expected of you if your application is successful and what you can expect from us. So by the 9th of August, that's a Monday, we'll be deciding on our program for next year, and you'd receive an email from us letting you know whether you've been successful or unsuccessful with your application this year. If you're unsuccessful, we generally provide generic feedback based on overall all of the applications we received. And you can certainly follow us up if you'd like more feedback. And if you're successful, we would offer you a place in the 22 exhibition program, and you'd be given a deadline to let us know whether that suits you and if you'd like to accept the offer. And then if you accept the offer, we'll be sending you a confirmation letter and a number of pieces of paperwork to complete. Lots of deadlines are outlined in the confirmation letter that we try to be firm with and that we'd expect you to try and meet. So those deadlines include things like the date to drop off your artworks, the date to provide us with a final list of work and images of each work, that sort of thing. And then in terms of the sort of support that we would offer, we'd help you and guide you in sort of developing work to include in the exhibition. We'd provide guidance on pricing and facilitate the sale of the work if you're interested. Your artworks will be carefully handled and professionally stored using our hanging system. We generally request that works are framed, although not at all times. It just has to be by negotiation, but framed works with D-rings on the back that are ready to go and ready to install using our hanging system. Restrictions permitting, there would be a catered official opening of the exhibition, and you'd be provided with an invite to share with your friends and family. Often a Boroondara councillor will officially open the exhibition and a curator will emcee the proceedings. Our marketing team coordinates marketing for each exhibition, including producing invitations e-newsletters and promoting the exhibition on social media. So you would receive an e-invite to the official opening, for example, prior to that, and then you'd be able to distribute that to your contacts. And depending on space availability, some of our community exhibitions also feature in the Boroondara Bulletin or as listings in publications like Art Guide. I think we've got a photo here from one of our openings earlier in the year, which was a combined opening of a major show and also a community exhibition in the foyer. So we've got a counsellor there officially opening the exhibition, and this was a little bit socially distanced, I think, this one. Sometimes at the moment we're having to cap the number of people we can invite to the openings, which is a shame, but who knows what next year will look like. And I think we could probably stop sharing screen there, Steph, and I'll throw over to you, Alana, to run through how to do your application form through Smiley grants.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So the Smiley grants process, oops, sorry about that. The Smiley grants process, it can be accessed through our City of Boroondara website. So this is the landing page for Boroondara. So I thought it would be best to start from the beginning. So you can find the Smiley grants application by searching for Apply Community Exhibition. It doesn't, yep, apply for a community exhibition. There we go, pops up, and it's often search number 1. So this goes through a lot of the information that Ellie has covered about the Community Exhibitions Program. And if you scroll down, you get to this button here, Start Your Application via Smarty Grants. So let's have a quick through. So in order to apply through Smarty Grants, you either have to already have an account with login and password, or you're required to register for an account. So that's a pretty seamless process, but for the purposes of this discussion, we are going to preview the form, and you can also download the form as well if you want to have a look at all the fill-ins beforehand. Alrighty, so here we start off with general information, including a link to the community application guidelines, which Ellie has already kindly covered for us. But if you need to refresh or refer back, you can access it via this first page here. And then some privacy information that we will require you to read through before we can get into the bulk of the application. All right, so applicant information, section 2. This is where we find out more about you. So if you are an individual or group, you can either include the name of the group in addition to your first name and last name and all those details, or if you're applying for an individual as an individual, just leave that blank. Anything that's marked with a little asterisk here is compulsory information, so please bear that in mind. You won't be able to press submit unless you've given some form of answer. Following further down, this is your contact information, and this is how we can get in touch with you if your application is successful, and also some additional information. Do you have an ABN? It's not required that you have an ABN in order to apply for an exhibition, but if you do have one, please let us know and give us the details of that ABN information. That would be great. And here is where we tick off the eligibility criteria. So to submit an application, you have to tick at least one of these options. Of course, if there are multiple that apply to you, please feel free to tick off as many that are relevant. Don't feel like you need to tick all of them off in order to submit an application with us. At least one is required. And then here we have some information regarding demographics. So this is a bit more information about you. It's not compulsory, but it really helps us in terms of ensuring that opportunities with the City of Boroondara reach as many people as possible. So that is really helpful information for us to know, but not compulsory. All right, and then the next section is where we learn a little bit more about your proposal. So the first section is more of a general scope about your practice as an artist. So tell us a bit more about you, the themes that you explore with your work, the mediums you like to work with, encapsulating your practice as a whole so that we can see how this proposed exhibition fits into your overall work. Also note that we do have word limits, so you can see word limits at the bottom of each field that requires a long text answer. Again, unless you meet the word limit, so you can go under, but if you go over, you won't be able to submit the application. So if you're having trouble submitting, check to see that they haven't flagged that you're over the word limit in any of these areas. If you would, so these are referring to the themes that Ellie discussed before. So if your application relates to one of these themes, please tick, but this section isn't compulsory. And then here is where we learn a bit more about the exhibition specifically. So proposed exhibition title, if it's a group exhibition, the names of everyone who's in your group, and then the concept for your exhibition. So the themes that you're exploring and all the topics that the series of artworks will be exploring as a whole. So a bit more specific about what this exhibition aims to do. And following that is providing a brief outline of the logistics of your exhibition. So the number of works, the size, the medium, how you intend for them to work in the space, and you can refer to sort of the details that Ellie provided about the two spaces that we have. If the works don't exist, or you still need to make the works, that's fine. But if you could try and give us this information of how many works you intend to make and how big you intend them to be, this information is still really helpful for us in the logistics stage. And then we have, how does this project relate to the Boroondara community? So this field allows us for better understanding of what of the eligibility of your work and the criteria that Ellie mentioned in terms of what the scope of this exhibition or practice will achieve for the greater community. So this can happen in another number of ways. It could either happen through subject matter, or your work may include members of the community directly. So it could be a literal interpretation of subject matter. Maybe your works have actually been created in Boroondara or about Boroondara, but this is not in any way required. Sometimes the theme can be a lot broader. For instance, one of our previous artists explored the dog population of Boroondara and created works about all the information she learned about dogs, which resulted in a portrait show featuring dogs, or even broader still. So we have a very prominent youth population. So maybe your exhibition explores themes that are relevant to the local youth and issues pertaining to being young in Australia, and that is relevant to our community as well. So this is just how you explain the themes of your exhibition and how it can relate to our local community. How will this project benefit your development? So we would love to hear what this opportunity will achieve for you as well and help you as a member of the Boroondara community. So for instance, perhaps this is a stepping stone on the way to getting people to see your work or further your artistic practice. If you believe that to be the case, we'd love to hear about it. Will any of your works be for sale? As Ellie mentioned, we have a shop, so you have the option of saying yes, you would love us to sell the works on your behalf, or no, you'd rather not. Have you exhibited in our program before? Are you willing to be in a group format with other artists? You have the option of saying yes or no, but as Ellie mentioned, sometimes we'll receive multiple applications about a particular theme like nature. So if you tick yes, you are not so much in competition with all your co-collaborators who would be exploring the same theme, but you're open to sort of being curated as part of a group exhibition exploring that theme. So that strengthens your chances a little bit. And then preference for where you would like to exhibit and when you would like to be exhibited. So we have 3-month periods. Then you can list an order of your preference. The exhibitions themselves last for 4 to 6 weeks. So please identify which 3 months in the year you would prefer. And this might be relevant to you, for instance, if maybe you do need some more time to create the works, you might opt to be later in the year or earlier in the year. That's up to you, but it's helpful, again, to know what your preferences are. And then this is where the final section is where we attach support materials. So details of your work and any images. So you can have up to 5 images, and please be aware it is really helpful when the works are clearly named. So artist name, title of work, and the date of the work as well when you're saving your files and uploading them, and also image files. So for instance, if you may be submitting images of the final work, or you might be submitting images of indicative works that sort of show your practice and what the future works might look at. So this is where you can say indicative or final work and list the name, the year, materials, dimensions, all that information. Curriculum vitae, this is if you've exhibited before. It's okay if you haven't, that's not a requirement to this application, but if you do have any previous exhibition histories, that's great for us to know about. You feel free to develop a CV and upload it here. And then this is a section for any information that is helpful for us to know. So once you've completed all this information, you have the option to submit. Please be aware that technical issues happen to everyone. So I would recommend not leaving your application to the 20th of June. Give yourself some time with the application to work at it in case you do encounter any technical difficulties and you need us to provide any assistance. The more time you have, the better. Also, be aware that once you've submitted an application to Smarty Grants, you will get an email sent to your nominated email address confirming. So if you have not received this confirmation email, it's likely that for some reason or another, the submission hasn't actually been processed, and that can be a problem if we've reached the due date and it hasn't been submitted. We can't actually access the application, and there's very little we can do on our end. So make sure you've received the confirmation email. Otherwise, assume that it hasn't been confirmed and something's up. Again, if you run into any issues, you can get in touch with us and we can do our best to provide any assistance that we can, but the earlier you reach out to us, the better. Alrighty, I might give it back to Ellie.
Thanks, Alana. That was great and nice and detailed. I noticed a typo, which is entirely my fault in the form there. When you get to that question asking about which would be your preferred month, it says which would be your preferred month in 2021, and that should be 2022. So just to clarify to everyone, applications we receive in the next few weeks are to be looked at for next year's program. So we've got lots of questions coming in and lots of time to go through them, which is really exciting. So I might just start with the ones that have come through the Q&A function down the bottom here. We've got what weight can the hanging system take in terms of the weight of the artwork? So that's a really good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I feel like it's possibly, I reckon we would easily be able to hang something that's about 10 kilos. It also probably depends how many works are across a particular section of the hanging system. So if you look, for example, at either mine or Steph's background photo, right at the top of the wall, there's a strip connected to the wall that the hanging wires hang from. So there'd be like 2 short sections on one side and 1 long section along the long wall. So we'd have to also just kind of gauge how many works are across the whole wall, I'd say. But that's a very good question. Certainly, we can always work things out with people too. You know, there's no reason why you shouldn't submit an application if you feel like you've got quite heavy works, and we'll see what we can do. We've had some mosaics installed, sort of relief mosaics, using that hanging system in the past, so it's pretty versatile. I've got a question here. Would it be possible to have 3D works in the foyer space or only 2D? Certainly that foyer space does lend itself quite nicely to 3-dimensional works, whereas Gallery 4 is a little less friendly for 3-dimensional works. So yes, we'd certainly consider 3D works in that space. We just have to be mindful about making that exhibition space a little bit flexible, just in terms of other bookings in that space. And for example, we host the Hawthorne Makers Market at Hawthorne Arts Centre on the first Sunday of every month, and they really just take over most of the ground floor of the building and set up stalls, which is wonderful because we get so many people through, but it just means that whatever we program into that centre foyer space, generally we may need to pack it away for a day and then reinstall, which isn't ideal. So we kind of just juggle dates and see if we can avoid market dates, or if we can reposition works for the market day or something like that. So it's all in negotiation, but certainly, you know, if you have 3-dimensional works, please submit an application and we'll just kind of work through it. Are photographers accepted for exhibitions? Absolutely. We're big fans of photography at Town Hall Gallery. We often see if we can curate exhibitions, community exhibitions and our major shows in parallel in a way as well. So if we're looking at doing a major photography exhibition, we might try and align the community exhibitions at the same time. So we've also had a question earlier today by email about whether we would accept photographic prints rather than framed works, and I would say yes. Obviously, framed works with D-rings are our first preference, but we always aim for some diversity in that space and a diversity of mediums and applications, and certainly we'd be open to pinning prints to the wall. Right now, we have a community exhibition from local primary students, and it's all A4 or A3, I think, works that have been pinned to the wall. So yes, certainly that's doable. Also, Alana and Steph, feel free to chime in if I've missed anything along the way.
Another question we've received is the gallery supervised? So yes, there's always someone in the customer service desk at the front of the gallery, and we also have a volunteer program for when the gallery is open to so volunteers will invigilate the space and keep an eye on how many visitors there are and people going in and out, and make sure no one's touching anything they shouldn't. And there's always at least one curator as well working on site, so we try and do that as well. So short answer is yes, there's always someone around.
Just looking at some other questions we've got here. A 3-month window in 2021 only. I think that must be some confusion over my typo in the online form. So I feel like we've clarified that. And certainly, yes, sculptural and installation works we'd certainly consider for the centre foyer. We've got a question here. Are there display cases available for use? And yes, there are. We do have plinths. We do have display cases. Some of you who have visited the gallery in real life may have once remembered we had a shop and in the foyer space, and actually that shop didn't quite survive COVID lockdowns last year and has now been reinvented as an online shop. So we have heaps and heaps of cabinets that used to also display shop stock that are now available for displaying artworks, as well as some museum cabinets that are probably around about 1.5 meters long by 70 centimeters wide. So a sort of long flat bed with raised glass over them, and the glass is probably about 60 centimeters high. So really nice for displaying smaller items that aren't too tall. Yeah, what else have we got? If the works are not ready at the time of the application submission, roughly how long prior to display they needed to be finished and delivered to you? That's a great question. So I think that comes back to some of the deadlines that we outline in the confirmation letter. So there's the content deadline, and I think normally that's, hopefully I've got this right, Steph, 6 weeks prior or 4 to 6 weeks prior to install. We generally request that you confirm how many works, the size, the titles, the price if you're going to make them available for sale, and I think that's it. And also provide images. It doesn't have to be super high res images, but we need thumbnail images to put on the broom sheets for each work. And we also upload them all to our online shop too. So yeah, I didn't really talk too much about the online shop. Alana's going to be looking after that for us soon, which is really exciting. So I don't know, Alana, did you want to jump in and tell us a little bit more about the online shop?
Yep, absolutely. So with once you give us the information regarding your work, the details, the size, and also your preferred price, and we can sort of and that's factoring in that we would be taking a 15% commission. Is that right, Ellie? 15%? Yep, absolutely. So we put everything online, and it can only be purchased online. So people, if someone comes into the gallery and they're wanting to buy work, we would redirect them online as well. So it's all the details, how many of a particular work, if your work's a photograph, edition, we'll take that information as well and factor that in, and it can all be processed online. So yeah, and you also have the option of selling maybe one or two of your works, but not necessarily the whole exhibition. That is also completely optional from your perspective as well, if there's some that you can't feel to part with.
Perfect, thank you. I've just seen another question too about the display cases and are they secure? And yes, they are secure and lockable.
Ellie, I'll just quickly jump in here just to go back to the question about the hanging system and what weight they can take. I've just looked it up, and I think each hook can take up to 20 kilos.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm just working through there. I just want to make sure. The very first question threw me a little bit. I'm just trying to think through. So is this for local artists solely, or also community organisations with a message of harmony and inclusion from an overseas experience? Good question. So I guess what we're looking for is some connection to Boroondara. So if you're not a community group or an artist that's based in Boroondara, I think we may be open to an exhibition where the content is going to be have a local focus. Does that feel right to you, Alana and Steph?
I think if the community organisation services people who live in Boroondara but not necessarily based in Boroondara, then that would make them eligible. I think purely on content alone, perhaps not, but if they can demonstrate that they service people who live in Boroondara, then definitely yes.
Excellent clarification, thank you. I've got a question here around group exhibitions. So how do you send information if there's a group of 6 designers and artists when you can only upload 3 to 5 images? So it is, so I think the form is set up so that you have to, it's compulsory to upload 3 images and optional to upload an additional 2. So up to 5 in total. So I suppose you would just have to pick one image from 5 of the 6 designers and perhaps somewhere note in your application that there's an additional artist or designer not represented through the images. There's also options in the form to have a link to websites. Or include social media handles as well. So you can definitely add additional info in that way. And you're also most welcome to follow us up with an email. Our email is going to be up on the last slide before we finish the session tonight. We welcome any sort of further follow-up emails or questions. So perhaps you could submit your application and just flag that you felt like there wasn't quite enough fields to answer what you needed to answer, and that you'd like to maybe send through one more image, and we can just get back to you on that one. We've got a question here. Is there AV equipment available, projector screens, speakers? Actually, yes. So we do have, we can make a screen available for an exhibition. It just depends on the timing and if we might need it for any other shows at the same time. So we tend not to promise it, but we are sort of, I think we do manage to make it available. And lately we've been installing it. If you, for example, look at Steph's background, there's a wall. There's a wall to the left of the door at the end of the space, and we've been known to install a TV screen there out on the wall for a few different community exhibitions. Projector is trickier in that space. I can't see how it would work with how bright it is in the centre foyer, and I'm not quite sure. It's probably all still too bright to do it in Gallery 4 as well. Speakers, I think we could possibly make available. I certainly wouldn't rule it out, and just ask, and we can see what we can do. I've got a question here. Can the size of the artwork be revised after the proposal is accepted? So yes, it can. Obviously, we don't expect you always to have all of the artworks ready to go at this stage when you're looking at wanting to exhibit in November next year. So just provide an indicative size based on your sort of average dimensions that you normally like to work it with, and it's quite common when we hit that that deadline, the content deadline that I've sort of mentioned a couple of times. That's when we really want that sort of information ironclad and knuckled down. Size of cabinets and number. Good question. I just saw a little pop up. Steph, did you want to answer that question? I don't know how you're doing that, but go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, and I don't know off the top of my head.
To answer this question. Sorry.
Off the top of my head, I just can't remember how many cabinets we have. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's tricky. I think we've got the 4 museum cabinets, which are the flatbed with the raised glass over them, and we've got I don't know, quite a few plinths that are well suited to sort of sculptures that would be maybe 30 by 30 or footprint, and then however height you need. And then, yeah, the other cabinets would be the shop cabinets. So really it's just the museum cabinets and the shop cabinets. So the shop cabinets were probably about, you know what, I'm going to come back to that question and I'll see if I can look up the exact dimensions while we're chatting. I don't know, Alana, would you mind jumping in and answering a couple of the next questions while I look that up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got one. Is it required to include all details, names, etc. of those attending to exhibit in a group? And yes, for the purposes of applications, we do need to know all the sort of scope of the exhibition and who intends to exhibit. If you encountered an artist after your proposal was accepted and you were desperate to sort of include them in the proposal, feel free to sort of reach out and discuss with us the potential, but For the purposes of getting an accurate scope of the exhibition you intend to exhibit, knowing who will be involved is an important factor to the application being approved. So, yep, that would be preferable. What typical grant amounts, and do they need to be acquitted? Do you verify that they have been spent as intended? So this is an application to exhibit in our exhibition space. There is no sort of money affiliated with exhibiting in the space, but in return, you not only get the space, but also our support as curators and additional support that Ellie mentioned at the start of the presentation, but there isn't sort of a money grant to create the works involved. So just to clarify that, can you leave business cards or art cards if your art is on exhibition for people to take home? What I believe you can, yes, that is more than acceptable.
And I'll just add to that that we create flyers for each exhibition too. So often we'll have a plinth out with the room sheet, with a flyer for the exhibition, certainly some business cards if you'd like. We have in the past made some cards available for sale and shop too. I think that's still something we can do with our new online shop. Cool. All right. So going back to the size of the cabinets and the number. So the museum cabinets that I mentioned are the bed size is 159 by 89 centimetres, and then the glass is 105 centimetres high. Although there's two in that height and then two shorter ones that are just 100 centimetres high. And then we've got the shop cabinets. So we've got 5 tall shop cabinets. This is probably very hard to get your head around, so I'll keep it quick. But if you want more information, please email us and we can send you pictures and dimensions. But the shop cabinets are 180 high, 120 wide, and 70 centimetres deep. And the smaller sort of display cabinets that you'd look down into, they're 100 centimetres high, and the sort of square bed is 70 by 70 centimetres. That doesn't clarify because that's 100 centimetres high, maybe from floor to the top of the cabinet. So we actually haven't written down the height from the bed to the top of the glass. So we probably just reach out to us. Unfortunately, I don't have those dimensions to hand, but I reckon it'd probably be about maybe 40 or so centimetres high. So that's all the questions in the Q&A. I'll just have a quick look at the chat function here. I notice the examples are more of traditional hanging artworks. Have you had success in presenting more sculptural works or freestanding works on plinths? Absolutely. Are there any limitations to having works on the floor itself? I feel like traditionally we don't normally put too many things on the floor. We probably tend to bring out a floor plinth, but that's an option. We certainly have some plinths we can put on the floor and put artworks on plinths. I guess it just depends. Something we have to be mindful of when we're curating these two spaces is that people are passing by all the time. So Gallery 4 is a thoroughfare, and that means like if you look at my background, for example, there's a slightly recessed part of the hallway where you can put plinths along the wall there, and that works quite well. But certainly we couldn't put something right in the middle of the space. And it's a little bit the same. I guess the centre foyer is certainly more flexible with putting things into the space rather than just on the walls. But I guess we just have to be careful about traffic flow and the way that we lay things out. But we sort of deal with each show as it comes along.
Another question we've received in an email is, am I allowed to invite 150 to 200 people to the opening? This would, of course, be subject to COVID restrictions. first and foremost. Hopefully we won't be needing to deal with them in 2022, but we have to act on the assumption that we probably will. So we will be subject to those restrictions. And also bear in mind that the exhibition opening may be in collaboration with other exhibition openings, or if you're part of a group exhibition, or if you've been put into a group exhibition, then you will be sort of having to negotiate a little bit with your fellow exhibitors. So it's always a discussion, and bear that in mind.
Fantastic. I think we've covered all the questions in the chat there. I'm just going to have another quick look at the ones that came through by email, but I reckon hopefully we're answering what people want to know. Sometimes we get asked to accept hard copy applications, and generally our sort of preference is definitely that you'd fill in the online application form. But certainly if you need some assistance with the online application form, you can give us a call and we can help you. If you don't have access to a computer, if you could book one at a library and use a computer there, that would be great. But if you really are struggling to access that online form, then by all means reach out to us and we can create a hard copy one for you and either post it out or make it available for collection at the customer service counter at Hawthorne Arts Centre.
Another point I'll make about the Smarty grants application, which I forgot to make earlier, I apologize, is that people tend to have problems when they're working via a tablet or a phone device. So a desktop computer or a laptop is usually the easiest way to ensure that you don't encounter any fiddly issues with Smarty grants. So that might be a way of solving any problems you have.
Excellent. And I think if you're having any trouble submitting, I find the most common reason is you haven't answered one of the questions that has an asterisk and that you have to complete to submit. Just having a little look. Well, for photography, be treated equally to painting, drawing. Absolutely. I think hopefully we've demonstrated that we're sort of very supportive of photography and welcome applications there. I think often we don't get too many photography applications, so it'd be lovely to see some more. Sometimes we're asked how many applications we receive, and I would say on average maybe about 50. So your odds are fairly good considering we offer like a solo show or curate a number of individual applicants into a group show. That means we certainly try to give as many people opportunities as we can. I think that's pretty well it. Unless anyone has any last burning questions to submit through the Q&A or the chat, that's probably everything covered. Go back to my notes here. So
photographs recommended size.
Did I miss that? Sorry.
So bearing in mind that you would be responsible for all your own printing and framing and also delivery of the works to the gallery. Apart from that, the size of the gallery spaces. So if your works can fit, they can sit.
Perfect. All right. Well, I reckon that brings us to the end of the session, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and we hope it's been informative and insightful for you. If you think of anything else you'd like to ask us, please feel free to email that through. Actually, just on the subject of our email, if you have questions, it probably would be preferable to email them through or email us to set up a time to have a chat over the phone, because with us working sort of a hybrid on-site and remotely, the phone system's not always super reliable if you want to just pick up and ring. So if you have any trouble getting hold of us, just send us an email and we can reply by email or give you a ring. A lot of info to digest from today, so just remember that the session's recorded and you can revisit the recording if you'd like. And that also a lot of the information that we've been through is available on our website under the Apply for a Community Exhibition page that Alana showed us just before. we'll be sending out a follow-up email with a link to a survey to tell us about your experience. We'll keep it short, but this is the first time we've done this session. We'll probably do it each year when applications open. So please give us any feedback if you have any, and we'll take that on board. And don't forget to get your application in before the 20th of June, and don't leave it to the last minute in case you suddenly realise you need to ask us a question, or if you're having any trouble with Smiley grants. And check out our website for any more information about the gallery or the collection or other events organised by Boroondara Arts. So that's www.boroondara.vic.gov.au/arts. And once again, thanks everyone for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your evening.